welcome to this week's JavaScript Special Interest Group Weekly Meeting. It is August 11th, 2016. I remain Patrick Rogers, Senior Program Manager with Office 365, and I think we've got a good meeting for you this week. Good to talk about some neat stuff and some upcoming announcements as well. But as always, I want to start off with a discussion of kind of who we are and what we do. We are the SharePoint Patterns and Practices JavaScript Special Interest Group, and we exist inside the larger SharePoint Patterns and Practices program. We do carry this idea of worldwide one team, so wherever you are in the world and whoever you are, you're absolutely welcome to join in and participate, whether that's through the social channels or whether that's through contributing code or reporting issues or any of those things. So everyone is welcome. We're absolutely excited to get everybody involved that would like to be involved. To that end, we've got a couple of ideas. The first is this idea of an elastic team. So folks, folks will have a lot of time some weeks and less time other weeks. You've seen over the last 2 weeks, I myself have had not as much time as I'd like to participate here in the Patterns and Practices activities. So that's totally accepted and expected. So don't worry about that. If you 1 week get really busy and another week can come back, we'd love to have you when you have the time. We also remain very community driven, so we're always looking to make improvements and grow and provide or get great feedback from the community and also provide great services out to the community, whether that's use of our code library or use of our guidance or samples or things like that. So always looking for that feedback for what we can be doing better and incorporating that into the work we do. And lastly, the most important one to me is enabling developers, and that's got two sides to it. Firstly, enabling developers who participate here on the team to have a great experience, so get to write some fun code, learn some new things. I know in the whole open source ecosystem, I'm constantly learning new things because there's so much going on. So getting in, diving into that, and hopefully having a really fun time. And the other side of that is enabling those folks who consume our work. So both the library, again, and the guidance and the samples and things to also have a great experience. So making sure those things are documented as best they can be, are tested as best they can be, and really work for folks in kind of an enterprise development environment. That's an ongoing journey, of course, and we're always looking for help making those improvements in the documentation and the testing, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. 2 links at the bottom. One, the first to our Yammer group. Yes, we are still in Yammer, so that for the time being is the place to go for discussions, if you have general questions, things like that. And the bottom link is our GitHub repository. So if you want to contribute to the code, report an issue, or just kind of want to see, have a look at the code, something like that, go ahead and check out the GitHub repository there. So thank you again to all our contributors. We haven't had any new contributions in the last week, nothing even from myself, like I said. But thanks to these folks who have all contributed in the past. Jorn H, I'd love to get a full name for you if you ever listen to this. I've reached out to you a couple ways, so would love to get a full name if you want. And as for everybody else that's contributed, if you attended the monthly call, which was earlier this week for the Patterns and Practices for the All Up Patterns and Practices program, you did see us sort of surfacing up those company logos and getting that recognition out for the companies that allow their folks time to participate here in the program. So, and I extend again that invitation to all of you. If your company is providing you time to contribute and would like some additional recognition, please let us know. We're very happy to get a logo from them and recognize the time they give you to participate here in our program. So it's sort of the least we can do is say thank you as much as we can, and we do want to get everyone the recognition they want and very much deserve in that regard. Lastly on this, again, I try and say every week, if you see your name in the authors file and you'd like it updated, perhaps I've spelled it wrong, for which I'm very, very sorry, but you'd like perhaps an email address or some other piece of information in that authors file, also very happy to make those updates. Again, trying to get everybody as much recognition as we can. So thank you to everybody that has contributed, and we'll talk about opportunities if you'd like to contribute in the future. So our agenda for this week, we're going to talk about topics from Yammer and Gitter, do our weekly stand-up, opportunities for contribution, and then our team discussion this week, we'll talk some more about Sandbox Solutions and talk about some of the, I'll call them opportunities around Sandbox Solutions for folks on this call and who might have their own companies or do that kind of consulting work. There's an upcoming SharePoint event on 8/17. We'll talk about that a little bit. And the Node console app. If you attended the monthly call and stayed to the bitter end, you saw a quick demo of a Node console app kind of concept, and I want to dive into that a little more deeply on this call because it's something I've been using myself a lot lately and playing with, and it's kind of a neat idea. So it's sort of a little bit easier, I think, than spinning up a Visual Studio console app and on all that. So we'll take a look at that. So in Yammer and Gitter, two things this week. The first one, there's been some general comments around, well, I just don't have time to contribute, and I did want to address that a little bit, and that's totally expected. There's, again, that idea of an elastic team. Some weeks you'll have time, some weeks you won't. But I would absolutely invite everyone who's listening to this or who will view the recording of this at a later date, start small, like get involved. Maybe you just kind of update some code comments, which again will help and update our documentation and make the documentation better. Maybe there's a typo somewhere, or you just see, maybe there's a method that could be done a little bit more efficiently. So, really start small. You don't have to make giant contributions to get started. So I know a lot of these tools are new to folks. For example, GitHub, Node, all these sort of things are new. So like any project, start small, try and get involved. If you've got questions, reach out on Yammer, reach out on Gitter. Folks will help out. I'll try and help you out as much as we can. But, understanding everybody's very busy, understanding everybody's time is tight, but very much open invitation for anybody that would like to contribute. They don't have to be big contributions. They can be small contributions. Dip your toe in the water, kind of see how things work, see how creating a pull request works. And once you kind of do it, 5-6 times like anything else in life, it'll become sort of second nature. So, I mean, when I first picked this up, I don't know, about a year ago, I started to get involved in this kind of stuff. It was all very new and confusing, and a lot of it, frankly, still is at times. But start small. So do try and find that time. Again, contributions really help the community, help us all grow, and help what we're doing just get better. So I think those are great questions. And again, it comes back to that idea of elastic team. But do try and start small. And I think it's a great way to get involved and start with that learning process. And the final question, there is somebody pointed out we're getting a discrepancy, something with the TS-lint version, and I remembered that we sort of locked that as a specific version because there was a bug in TS-lint. I haven't had time to circle back, but if somebody gets a chance, if we can update to the latest version, and if Gulp Lint works and we come back clean on that, very happy to just up the version in the package.json. So that's an easy fix, but did want to sort of address that is fixed right now because there was a bug in the TS-lint library that was impacting us. So just did recognize that, but haven't had a chance to dive into that myself. But if somebody else has a chance to just take a quick look at that, and if we can update that in the package.json, very happy to do so. 2 links down there at the bottom again to the Yammer and to our Gitter. So both of those are great places. If you have general questions or discussions or want to make a contribution and aren't sure necessarily how to go about it, those are both great places to jump in and ask those questions or give those and give those comments and feedback. Again, for now, still on Yammer. We will let you know what our plans are moving forward with that, but I don't have details really to share around where we're moving yet. So that will be forthcoming. So weekly stand-up, what's been going on? The upcoming public tools preview. So that's going to be very cool. It's going to get the stuff into folks' hands that want to start building on the SharePoint framework dev stack. It's going to start with web parts, and it's going to start out building on local host. I cannot tell you a date that the public preview will be released, but I can tell you there's an upcoming keynote on 8/17 where the details of this will be discussed. That's at SharePoint Fest in Seattle, so I'll let you guys connect the dots on that. But so really exciting. I'm excited for everybody to get a chance to get their hands on the dev tools. And again, coming out of that, I expect a lot of great feedback. There'll be channels directly to the product group to give that feedback, as well as through this community. I'm happy to take that feedback. And again, it's all about making the whole experience better for everybody. So check out that keynote on 8/17. I have not been able to find a public link where that's going to be broadcast yet, but we'll update folks if I can find one for that. So really exciting. Really looking forward to getting that into folks' hands and seeing the great stuff everybody's going to come up with. Can everybody just double check they're on mute for me? So some upcoming blog posts. Still working. The documentation generation one is pretty much done. I just need to publish that. I've got one on the Webpack trick. We'll discuss that a little bit later. And then the Node console app that I'm going to show you folks today, we will also, I'm going to do a blog post on that because I think it's kind of a nice way to use the library and do some simple SharePoint operations. So Sandbox Solutions, we'll come back to this in the discussion, but did want to mention we talked about this last week, but there's a script to list the solutions from your tenant. That has been updated, so if you or your customers are impacted, we've got the updated script there. We also have a lot of guidance coming on migrating out of various Sandbox Solutions scenarios. So are trying to help out as much as we can in that regard and smooth the process of getting out of Sandbox as much as we can after the sudden announcement of their deprecation. So coming up, opportunities to contribute. Again, these are unchanged from last week. Like I said, I myself haven't had time. So still have the same areas we're looking to get some help in. Documentation, styling, and the general UX of the API docs. I think that's a great opportunity for one or more folks that want to have a very visible impact for the community. Testing, again, using the library, get us that feedback, report issues. There are a couple of issues I saw on GitHub, and haven't had time myself to have a look at those. If anybody in the community has a chance and wants to take a look at that, very happy, for folks to submit pull requests that are fixing those. And I don't frankly know the details of those issues yet, so I don't really have a measure on complexity at this time. Writing tests, we're still looking for help writing tests against SharePoint. So we've got some examples of that out there. You can comment again on issue number 40 to grab an area. That's to help us not overlap on work. Apologies for that. My brain is fried after the last 2 weeks. So just grab an area there. Definitely look forward to help there. In terms of issues, if you I mentioned a little bit above, if you see issues and you can help out, just ask to be assigned. I will make sure you get assigned to that issue. So team discussion for this week. I did mention I've got some upcoming blog posts of my own. I did want to mention again, if you are out there and you're blogging about this, about the JavaScript core library specifically, let me know. I'm very happy to help advertise that. I will tweet that out with what reach I have there, but I also am working on a series of blog posts and working on a way to incorporate this into our documentation or into the wiki somehow, but want to start directing folks who are asking those how do I get started questions or things like that out to community blogs as well, so that the voice isn't just necessarily for myself or the core team, but folks can see the community work that's going on around this as well. So if you are doing some blogging, please let me know. I'd love to help advertise what you're doing out there. and I've tried to do that as much as I can, but I don't always catch stuff myself. So just hit me on Twitter or shoot me a note on Yammer, and I'm very happy to help advertise that stuff out. I did want to give a brief update on Sandbox Solutions. I know this is the JavaScript special interest group, and you're asking why would you be talking about Sandbox Solutions? And at the end, you'll kind of see. But I did want to mention, if you or your customers are impacted, please do call support or engage with Microsoft support. It was admittedly a little rocky at the very beginning, but we've got a very solid process. The support team has done a great job. So we're very much more efficient at helping you out. We want to, that's the channel in, is call support. And there's two main paths, whether you want existing solutions to run longer or you want the ability to activate new instances of a solution. Engage with support. Support will get the information required, and we will, as fast as we can, get that stuff going. So you probably asking yourself, again, why are you bringing this up in the JavaScript special interest group call? If you're out there and you have customers or yourself are affected by this, this is a great sort of, I'll call it opportunity, albeit a forced opportunity, to look at the possibility of rewriting a lot of this functionality in a more client-side model. The upcoming public preview of the dev stack will help with that, but also you can start writing this stuff in a lot of JavaScript, a lot of client-side technologies. For example, a lot of the things we're seeing are simple forms. It's literally a couple of fields and it writes to a list. That's a great great candidate for a client-side solution. Other things like that, anything that's web parts, great opportunity for a client-side solution. So that's a great chance to start discussing that with your customers. It doesn't have to be based on the SharePoint framework, but there's ways, and as soon as I get time, there'll be a blog post, and I think it's going to be an MSDN article on getting visual web parts over into sort of the client side space and how to do that. So it's a good opportunity to start having those conversations with your customers around moving to a more client-side model. And if you can do that, that's going to play into the SharePoint framework. So it's a way to transform the discussion into kind of a, this is unfortunate, but let's look at the future, and this is how we can progress. And if you were going to rewrite some things for the upcoming SharePoint framework, this is a good, kind of on-ramp to do that. So I did want to mention one last time that SharePoint event on 8/17 will tie into the upcoming public preview of the tools, for which I cannot announce a date, but check out the thing on 8/17 for that. So the next thing I want to talk about is this idea of a Node console app. So this one of the most common things I've gotten asked or myself wanted to do is I just want to do commands quickly against a SharePoint site. How can I do that? And typically the answer would have been, I'm going to spin up a Visual Studio Console application. I'm going to get the awesome Patterns and Practices CSOM library, and I'm going to write my code, and that's how I'm going to do quick little one-off things. But I'd like to be able to do the same things in Node and using our library and making just quick little requests. And so the way to do that is I've created just a little console app, and I'll zip this up and put it out so folks can grab this if you'd like to use it yourself. But I wanted to sort of talk through this. And the first thing you're going to want to look at here is this Gulp file is super simple, and it's got two things. The first is just build. So this is very familiar to anybody that's ever looked at the build tasks in our library. It's just grabbing the source files as well as the extended typings, getting the project, and then running that through the TypeScript compiler, and then outputting it to a build folder. which you can see there. And then we've got another task here, run, which prereqs build, so build will run before run. And then it uses exec, which is something I hadn't used before. So new to me, but not new to the world of Node programming, of course. But you just do this require child process.exec, and then you can execute kind of any command you pretty much want, which is sort of cool. And so what I'm doing is running Node against our main.js. So I tried to align this to a Visual Studio solution. You've got a main class, so we have a main.js. Right now it's a TypeScript file. When it gets built into a JavaScript file. I think everybody's familiar with that at this point. And then we execute that, and it'll run whatever we've put into that TypeScript file. So that's kind of the build pipeline, and the command there is just gulp run. We'll build it and then execute it. So pretty neat. Looking at our main, I'll just show you write real quick is just a super simple little thing writes to the console. Nothing important there. And then we look at those of you who have seen some of the previous calls or looked at the blog posts, the PnP setup, I'm setting up our Node client options. So this is allowing us to make requests directly from Node. Those of you who've seen this before, nothing's changed there. So it's just a client ID, a secret, and a site URL. If anybody's trying to be sneaky, this is set up as read-only on my site, so don't be too excited about that. And then you can just execute your patterns and practices commands. So I'm going to comment all this out, and I'm going to grab my command window here, and I can just do gulp run, and that's going to run real quick. And then we'll get our request back from the site. So this is a real kind of neat, simple, quick way to run requests. It's also a neat way to see, if you're trying to test your queries out or see what the structure is that's going to come back in the JSON responses, things like that. This is a great way to do that. So kind of looking at this, this is something you've all seen before, but again in Node, and I think sort of easy to use. So one challenge I've had is batching currently does not work in Node, and I'm working on debugging that. It works, but the Node is exiting out before we get the response back. So I'm playing around with that. I think likely execute is going to need a promise. But in trying to figure this out, one thing I wanted to do is I want to debug, right? I want to see what's going on. How do I debug? Well, the way you do that in Visual Studio Code is through this launch.json. And so this is, again, I'll include this in the little zipped up file. And then this was all auto-generated, except I updated this, which is pointing to our program. So again, that's just build main.js. And then I updated this pre-launch task. So what they've done is they've made this clever enough, Visual Studio Code clever enough to understand we've got gulp, and our gulp has tasks, and one of those tasks is run. That I've defined, right? And so it's going to call that gulp task run before it does anything. And what that allows me to do now is go to this little, this is a bug. It took me a little bit to figure that out. This is a bug with a cross through it. So this is for debugging. I'm not great on icons sometimes. But so you can just hit the start arrow. So this is very much that Visual Studio F5 experience. And you're seeing now the exact same thing we were seeing in our console. You've seen the response come back, so that's what we saw. But then now you've seen we've got an error, not found. So we can start to add breakpoints in here. We're deep in Node.js, so we can actually add a breakpoint, something like that. We'll start this again. Stop this. Sorry, kind of hung up. We'll start this again. I may need reading glasses. Yeah, I probably do. I probably need to up my prescription. Oh, and of course, because we're in a demo, it missed my breakpoint. But so generally, breakpoints are going to get hit. But this is letting you start to see what the different things are and start to actually get a real debugging experience The stuff here is going to be sort of useless because we're in node.js, which is obviously the node itself, so we're not getting much help there. But I'm not going to waste everybody's time trying to make my breakpoints work, but you'll be able to get into your code, do some breakpoints, see some things happen, do some real kind of Visual Studio style debugging. You can add watches and things like that. So I think it's going to be a nice addition to kind of the work we've all been doing and helping us with our debugging story around that. So again, I'll package this up, but this is kind of where I've been going on trying to help folks with the debugging story as well as help myself, and getting this to a point where when I need to do simple requests, I've actually been using this to make some requests related to my work on Sandbox Solutions. So it's been nice to be able to just do quick little things against a SharePoint site using JavaScript and using our library. Did want to highlight this. I think it's going to be a nice addition. Again, working on batching. Batching not working, to be very clear, currently in Node, so working on figuring that out. And we'll continue to grow this as we grow, iterate, and improve all things. With that said, does anybody have any questions? Things like that. I did want to show you guys, there's been some questions, and this is a good opportunity to, and give me a second, I closed my browser. So I wanted to show, there's been some questions for folks that are maybe new to SharePoint on actually how you register these apps. And give me a second, I've got to get my text message verification here for login. And I want to show you guys actually how to register these apps in your site, so where this client ID and secret comes from. And I've got that, so I'm going to punch that number in there. And slowly but surely. All right, so we're into the site. And so this is just my dev site. For folks on the call, you've seen this many times. But the way you register these apps is you go to a page, appregnew.aspx. And if there are plenty of articles out there on how to do this, but I did want to kind of walk through it just to kind of show folks. And you're going to get this page, which asks for some information. And so for client ID and secret, I just generate a new one. This is just a random GUID, and I generate a new secret. This is actually just a set of random bytes. And then I give my app a title, which I usually give it something like, demo, delete me please. And that reminds me that this is for a demo and I should delete it when I'm done. And then there's two more fields here which can confuse some folks. For what we're doing, they don't matter. So you can just put in these Contoso values, because both these fields are required, but they're not required for what we're doing. This is if we had a provider-hosted add-in where we were actually doing sort of the round-robin redirect authentication, we would need these values to be correct. But for what we're doing, the app or the add-in only auth, we don't need that. So I've created or generated a new client ID, generated a secret, given it any title I want, and given it some dummy values here for these two. And then I just click create. So we do have a new registration. App identifier has been created. So I like to copy that to somewhere I won't forget it, and I've copied that off screen here. And then the next step is you go to another layouts page, appinv.aspx. So this app registration has two parts to it. The first is what we just did, which is generating the client ID and the secret. But right now, that client ID and secret has no permissions to my site. So what I've done is I've pasted that client ID And I don't know why our labels are different everywhere, but app ID is client ID. I've pasted that in here. Click lookup, and you can see my information here has been populated, but I've got another value here at the bottom for permissions request XML. So if you've ever created an add-in through Visual Studio creates this for you. After you go through, there's the permissions tab. You select your permissions, but you can also create that XML by yourself. And so just to sort of show you, here's our XML. And this can be very complicated, or have a lot of different app permission requests, or just a very few, like I have one. But the key for what we're doing is you have to include this allow app only policy equals true. So that is what allows us to make calls from our add-in, or from Node, which is acting as an add-in in this case. And then I've got one single request, which is scoped to the site collection, and I'm asking to be able to read everything in that site collection. I won't go right now into all the different permission requests, but there's plenty of posts out there on that, and plenty of additional info there. So you just paste that into your permissions request XML field and hit create, and then you get this trust screen. This will actually list out all the things you've asked for. So let it share its permissions with other users. That's the app only policy. And then let it read items in the site collection. And this one is always going to be there. Let it access basic information about users of this site. So for example, you can always get a user's name, stuff like that. So I'm going to say trust it, because I totally trust myself. And then I would just take, let me find the right things, and just to sort of close the loop on this, I'm going to put this ID there. And I'm going to put the client secret, and these are both just the ones I generated. I'm going to put both of those in place, hit save, and then I'll let me comment this stuff out so we don't really need the errors. And let's just see if we get our title back again, and I'll go, gotta cancel, save, go to this little bug, and I'm going to hit go, and let's see what we can get out of our output here. And oh, we've got an error making a GET request. So this is good. What's our status text here? Unauthorized. Oh, that's surprising. So we've got unauthorized response. So let me bounce back to pretty sure I did this correctly, but let's double check here. I'm going to put our same XML. Okay, trust it. Interesting. I wonder somehow if we are, let me do this real quick. Let me kill that. And I'm wondering if this is being held onto in Node. And so we'll go back here, close that guy, and see if we run it now. Huh. Still getting that. So I'm not going to go into this any further. Trust me, this process does work. Of course, every time. This week is just a week of things like this happening. So I'm just going to go with that. So with that, but that's going to be the console app. So working on sharing that out for folks. And then I've got a bunch of questions I can see going on over here in the IM window. So let's take a look at those. Oh, a bunch of stuff. Let me scroll back up to the top here. Let's see. So why can we not use the same testing tools as Bert demonstrated yesterday? Vase has answered this, and we are, the end goal is to do something very similar and automate that testing against SharePoint. But the first kind of part of that is getting the test coverage built out, and then figuring out how we can run that against SharePoint, again, on a, I don't know if we'll need to do a daily basis, but on maybe a weekly basis, or then there's a lot of open source continuous integration tools out there. So looking at what we can do with those, and that's just another big avenue I haven't been able to explore too deeply. Be a great, if anybody has a lot of experience in that area, I think it's something we can do. It's something that we have to share permissions out, and so I've got to figure out kind of how to make all that work, if you will. But so that's something we're definitely looking at. Is we won't be able to use exactly what Bert is using, because as Vesa said, that's sort of in the Visual Studio testing side. But we will, we are looking at ways to automate testing.
You can use some of the same techniques for kind of UI testing, but I think for unit testing you need to stick with a JavaScript framework, testing framework.
Yep, agree. And I just don't know what the best thing out there is. I mean, I know there's a couple really popular continuous integration things that will do your testing for you, but I don't know enough about them at this point. So
just to clarify on slightly more on that one. So obviously, just to clarify, these are not two completely isolated things. Me, Patrick, and Bert are having meetings almost every single day on thinking through what do we want to do, how do we automate testing, how do we do web testing for this library as an example. So we work together as a team in the PnP for thinking through all of these things. And one of the advantages of the new ownership of the PnP is that we get all the insights from the engineering. So now that whenever we get the initial framework out, we're going to start working on getting the ALM and testing frameworks, what our engineering is using natively, directly routed to the community as well. And we'll absolutely use the same models in the JS Core library. But one step at a time, there isn't infinite resources. That's always the problem.
Let's see. So, yep, Rancor has a tool for scanning Sandbox Solutions. Yep, Shantha has been doing some great blog posts and continues to, so check that stuff out. Why not use the PnP provisioning engine? It is more popular. The provisioning engine is very popular and works very, very well. I'll apologize a little bit because I forget the context of when that question would have come in. So I don't know exactly why that was asked. I thought this SIG would build upon the work done by the original team, Erwin, Paolo, and Bert, but we seem to have gone off on a tangent. Should this SIG not be building functionality in TypeScript which calls the PnP code? So a little, and I see there's some answers there, a little confused by that. The PnP code is C# managed code that runs sort of in executable environment, so on a Windows machine or server or something like that. I've been closely involved with all those folks, and they're all doing amazing work, but their work is in managed CSOM code. And so we are in sort of the JavaScript world, which is typically going to be run in a browser and or in Node, which neither of those areas support C# currently, and I don't believe ever will. So I say that, of course, tomorrow somebody will release an open source project that lets Node run C#. But so
actually, the web standards they're coming up with WebAssembly, which is basically going to be IL in the browser. So you might actually have to eat those words.
Well,
here in the next 5 years or so.
We'll see.
I'm sure I will.
Yeah.
This week has taught me humility. But so so they're different technologies. They're not competing, but they're complementary. So it's when folks want to do stuff in a managed code environment, absolutely, CSOM is the way to go, and we are not ever going to try and sort of supplant that. But for folks that are looking to do operations in the browser or operations now in Node, that's where we're looking to help out. We absolutely don't have feature parity at this point between the managed CSOM and our library, and I don't know that it's appropriate we ever would have full feature parity between the two. And we might have some features that the CSOM library doesn't, and so forth, and vice versa. So I think they're two different things. We are all working together, and we are all working to enable the same kinds of scenarios, but in two different environments, right? So, for example, I don't think we ever should or will have as full a provisioning story as exists in the CSOM library. They've done an amazing job. It's incredibly deep. The work they've done on the templates is incredibly strong, and I don't, frankly, see a reason to duplicate that. If somebody wants to, and somebody wants to duplicate all that work, and we can run it from Node, for example, if you wanted to spin up a Node, remote provisioning service, that'd be great. But it's not on my immediate roadmap at all.
I wouldn't rule that out. I think that would be quite there could be use cases for that. But there are situations where you want to use JavaScript, and there are situations where you want to use C#. If you're building a ASP.NET MVC site, for example, then you want to use the C# libraries. And if you're running something in the browser, you're forced to use JavaScript. But if you're I think it's a great example that you gave in that demonstration earlier, Patrick, where you were building a console application, but you could use either in that situation. But some developers might prefer to use JavaScript and Node, and that's a great solution.
Yeah, it absolutely would be, 100%. Like I said, if somebody wants to generate out all that provisioning logic so we can consume a template out of the template gallery that's coming for the provisioning engine and do it from Node, I think that'd be fantastic. Would love to see that.
Quick and obviously quick comment on that one. So even though it technically would also be kind of interesting to have the template the provisioning engine fully as TypeScript and JavaScript, there are, let's say, challenges around that one, because whenever you would be doing that, you would essentially be dependent on the browser session. And that's not necessarily a recommended pattern, because what will happen if somebody will close the browser while it's actually still provisioning, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
Node, like running.
No doubt.
It doesn't have to be in the browser.
Implement that as a web service or hosted in Node, and then JavaScript is calling that. It's the same model as with Azure and the web APIs. So no doubt, that's fair.
So let's see. Yeah, we're already calling REST. So Microsoft TypeScript is not the universal way Microsoft wants us to go. It's the way we're moving for this sort of client-side scripting, and for the upcoming SharePoint framework is going to be in TypeScript, but it's absolutely 100% still valid to be writing C# code with the CSOM library and all those things. That's, unless there's a major announcement I don't know about, that's not going away anytime soon at all. Yep, there is an API discrepancy, which hopefully we're going to get fixed up as much as we can. The new SharePoint will go to the TypeScript way. So we are going the TypeScript way. That's this JavaScript library, but that's for the UI and the client scripting. It's not necessarily for, again, the server-side kind of stuff, right? If you've typically written a provider-hosted add-in, MVC, C# hosted in, we'll say, Azure, keep doing that. That's not going to change, and a big part of the SharePoint framework story is going to be microservices. So this idea, since in the browser you obviously can't elevate permissions because you just can't. So if you need to do something in an add-in only manner and sort of essentially elevate that particular user, that model is still going to be to call from the browser out to your microservice to call back to SharePoint to do those activities as the add-in only permissions. So, so all of that is still a 100% valid way to do it. This isn't, one way or the other. It's all these technologies working together in the best way to meet the needs of whatever solution's being developed. So that's all of that is going to continue to be used. And then let's see. So I'm back at the bottom of the thread. Are there any other questions, comments, discussion points anybody wants to bring up? Well, with that, I'll say thank you to everybody. I'll try and get some blog posts out this week or maybe this weekend. And then if you have some time, again, small contributions absolutely are as valuable as large contributions. So it's a great way to get involved. So thank you to everyone. Really appreciate it. I really appreciate the time. And look forward to talking to you next week. And I'll see you on all the various social channels. Thanks, everybody.